Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. My name is Elijah. Today we're going to talk about some bad stuff, frankly. It's not very exciting. Um, Trying to be realistic about the state of the Orioles these days is what I'm trying to say. I don't love where we're at, and I am particularly concerned. There are signs of life in some respects and completely completely hopeless other aspects of the team. Um, One of the things right now that I am most disappointed in is Heston Kjerstad. I've alluded to his struggles a little bit on this podcast before. I think it is worth a slightly closer look here at what exactly is going on, what is so awful. Um, the Orioles are coming off of another series loss. Naturally, that's the norm these days. We won the first game against the Cardinals, dropped the next two um, in unceremonious fashion. Don't really have anything to say about it. Uh, let's go ahead and just get into it. Heston Kjerstad, he is. I we've been excited about him since we drafted him. He was always touted as somewhat defensively limited, but really just the bat talent was unbelievable. Um, he played his college days at Arkansas, I should say, and absolutely dominated. I want to say, led college baseball in home runs his junior year, his last year. Um, just really dominant. He had kind of an interesting swing, is a little bit herky jerky, but just like the ability to elevate the ball even on low pitches was so tantalizing. Um, and we took him and saved some money and turned that money into other prospects along the way in the draft. And I think all in all, we have seen what we expected to of him. Obviously, these numbers are a little outdated, but as of about 10 years ago, only 50% of first rounders ever made it to the major leagues. So I think, you know, a, as information becomes more readily available about these college kids and high school kids, to an extent, but as information becomes more readily available, teams are building out kind of more targeted scouting or getting a little bit better. I think those first rounders are hitting at higher rates, particularly in the top five, like Kjerstad was. Um, but to see somebody make it to the major leagues, that is what you want to see. He has clearly done that. We've gotten the return on the draft pick. Now, all of that aside, we've been waiting for him to get a legitimate chance at at everyday playing time, and now the Orioles are down Ramon Laureano, Tyler O'Neill, and Colton Cowser, and Kjerstad has that. He has that runway right now, and he's doing absolutely nothing with it. You can see in a third of a season, he's been worth almost -1 WAR. That is astonishingly bad. Um, I want to actually go ahead real quick, and I want to change this to 2024. Get off the Orioles. I don't, that I can tell you right now, there's no chance there was a player who was worth -3 WAR last year. Yeah, so the worst player was worth -2.1 WAR last year. That was Brandon Drury for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. -2.1. Kjerstad is on pace to blow that away by. Let me get back here real quick. Let's see. Doing some quick math. All right, that's not happening fast enough. I'm not going to bore you guys with silence while I type this out. But in about a third of the season, -0.9 WAR. So expect him to get, to the -2.8, 2.9 if he keeps this up. That would be horrifyingly bad. We don't want that to happen, of course. So let's take a look at what is happening with Kjerstad. I can tell you with full confidence, if this keeps up, he will be taking a trip to AAA. Um, you know, obviously that's not an option right now because we are in a position where with Cedric Mullins needing a day or two off, we ended up running Jorge Mateo out there on consecutive days in the outfield. We are not deep at the position right now. At, you know, Dylan Beavers is unavailable. You could talk about Judd Fabian, I guess. I am a Judd head, but at the same time, um, man, he has a lot of struggles with whiffs, so it's no guarantee that he'd be an offensive upgrade. Certainly would be a defensive upgrade, but just taking a look here, I think something that really shocks me is just he's got almost a 28% strikeout rate. He at the same time is walking under 3.5% of the time. That 3.4% walk rate is just unbelievably bad. And to illustrate that, I pulled up, everyone who has just 100 plate appearances this year. It's 295 players, almost 300. Heston Kjerstad has the 11th worst walk rate at 3.4%. The names below him are like Dylan Dingler, Michael Massey, Kyle Isbell, um, shockingly Teoscar Hernandez, but obviously Teoscar Hernandez is not a problem in terms of offensive output. Um, yeah, and like Javier Baez, it's a collection of names that are not known for plate discipline, are not known for, grinding out the at bat and drawing their walk. So Kjerstad is down there. I guess 11 out of almost 300. He's in the bottom 1.5% of the entire league of hitters with more than 100 plate appearances. That's like horribly, horribly bad, to put it simply. And I think one of the things that's most shocking about this is if you look at the guys who have uh, worse walk rates than him. Only one of them is striking out more. Leody Taveras has a 28.8% strikeout rate, 0.9% higher, but there is only one guy in Major League Baseball who's batted 100 times and has a worse walk rate and worse strikeout rate. Um, and I think the thing that I need to point out is that Leody Taveras has already been kicked off of one team this year, is now with his second team, and the Orioles are still running Kjerstad out there every day, and I don't blame the Orioles for that, but the fact of the matter is that he is not performing at a major league level right now. He does not look like an MLB contributor. I do not believe this is the final evolved form of Heston Kjerstad, I should say, but I do think that he's just in a terrible, terrible place right now, and the fact that we have so many injuries in the outfield. Um, Leaves us in this awful position where you just need to keep running him out there in such a way that he really doesn't have a chance to work on anything. Um, so another thing I wanted to note here is just looking ISO, isolated power. Uh, that is again slugging minus batting average. His 117, it's like, well, maybe he's doing some damage with it. There are only two guys on the list, or I guess three guys in those bottom 11 who have worse isolated powers than him. One of them is Michael Massey, the other is Tyrone Taylor, so just like awful, awful hitters. And then back to Leody Taveras. So, Kjerstad he has an awful approach right now. He is doing no damage with the bat. Um, and overall, he's been worth a 55 WRC plus, which is equivalent to he is about as good as half of one major league player. It's the offensive output is just so, so low. You can point to things like this 237 BABIP, batting average on balls in play. You can look at the discrepancy between his ex-WOBA and WOBA. Um, His WOBA is at 244, ex-WOBA at 297. And you could say maybe he's been a little bit unlucky. I guess for context on BABIP, an average BABIP in Major League Baseball is about 300. Um, so you could say he's been a little bit lucky. These like current numbers are not as good as the expected numbers. Um, ex-WOBA being based on kind of the quality of contact that you're making in terms of exit velocities, launch angles. Um, but yeah, the results just are not not there, very, very simply. So kind of looking into like, I was again shocked by the walkout and strike numbers, and I wanted to point out this one thing. I looked at pitchers who have thrown 50 innings, which almost, every regular starter has. The the, the exact number is 24.5% strikeout rate that Kjerstad has is surpassed by only six starters this year. And to show you just how bad that number is, the only starting pitchers who have that kind of strikeout minus walk rate, Tarek Skubal, Mackenzie Gore, Joe Ryan, Zach Wheeler, Hunter Green, and Hunter Brown. Um, you know, pitchers from the standpoint of walks and strikeouts essentially turn into one of the, top 10 pitchers in Major League Baseball when they're facing Heston Kjerstad this year. And that is just across all arms. So looking at kind of what's going on here, I obviously like his bat speed has taken a step back. Have talked about that in the past and probably will talk about it again today. The chase rate at 37.8%, one, two of almost every five pitches um, that he is seeing outside of the strike zone, he's pulling the trigger on. He is whiffing 28% of the time. That's 27th percentile. It's not a good look. The plate discipline, the approach is clearly, clearly just not there. Um, and I think the thing that, absolutely, absolutely best illustrates that is this chart right here. It's just pitch percentage by zone for those of you listening on podcast form. Just how often pitchers are throwing to each spot. And the two most, I guess I'll say, there are two zones that have an 18% and a 19% frequency. So like almost, you know, 40% of the pitches he's seeing are in these two zones, and those are low and away and low and in outside of the strike zone. Um, Pitchers are not really worried about throwing him strikes. Very, very simply, they are just pounding low and in, low and away, and that's about it. Again, almost 40% of the pitches he's seeing are outside of the strike zone in these two locations. And you might say, okay, sure, take your walk, but that's not what's been happening. In that low and away zone from him, he is swinging 51% of the time. So, 18% of the pitches he's seeing are low and away outside of the strike zone, and he's swinging half the time at it. Um, which is just not a recipe for success. I guess the couple things that I'll point out, like he's got a 53% whiff rate, so he's swinging at half these pitches, and half of those swings are swing and misses. Um, his average launch angle in that low and away zone in particular is -1 degree. The average exit velocity is only 82 miles an hour. So you can kind of look and you can say, okay, well, his BABIP is really bad, et cetera, et cetera. But the the quality of the contact, despite ex-WOBA, I can get into that a little bit in a second, but despite ex-WOBA, the quality of the contact is not good. And, you can see particularly he's getting worn out in this one location, and 82 miles an hour at -1 degree launch angle is a weak ground ball. That is all that it is. Um, and so they're just pounding him in this low and away zone. In the low and in zone, however, you do see that he's had a bit more success. The whiff rate is not as high, only 31%. He is getting to the ball and doing some damage. That's a 91 mile an hour average exit velocity, 15-degree launch angle. If he can make that work, that's splendid. Um, I guess if he can get to those pitches, then those results are very good. That's what you want to see. Not quite hard hit, but as an average exit velocity for down and in pitches off the zone, that's certainly good. Um, I think, like his bat speed has taken a step back, but you can see on those low and in pitches, like the bat speed is better. I guess more average. Average is about 71 miles an hour. Low and in, he's about 70. So, I, I think the thing to note more than anything is just that, pitchers are not inclined to really come at him. Um, he, he will chase that pitch low and away, and I think the percentage of off-speed pitches, if I go back here and change this a little bit, um, well, you can see, yeah, like breaking and off-speed pitches have been, well, I non-fastballs have been going up in usage, is what I really should say. Fastballs have been coming down. They kind of are just like junk balling him at this point, which I think is totally, totally fair. Um, he is not really doing that much damage inside the zone. I think that if you look at, I guess the best thing to look at is like barrels as a percentage of pitches here. He in the heart of the zone. Only 2% of the pitches he's seeing are getting converted into barrels. Um, it's it's a situation where when he does get something in the heart of the zone, he is not necessarily doing too much damage on it. You see a lot of like fouled off fastballs in the heart of the zone from him, and then you see him, trying to reach out, get these off speed breaking pitches, all this stuff outside and low and away is the particular zone that is most frustrating to watch him in right now. Um, and that's where hitters are going to keep attacking him. You can look at uh, I guess pretty much everything you look at here. It looks better the closer you come into him, the more that he's able to turn on a ball. Obviously, that's how baseball works, turn and burn. Um, but he just is not he's not getting those pitches and he needs to adjust and he's simply not doing it. Um, so definitely concerning from Mr. Kjerstad. I've got his like 50 plate appearance rolling xWOBA. It has um, over the course of the year just been below league average through and through. I I the dude needs to recalibrate, I guess is the simplest thing. As I was looking at kind of into his swing speeds, again, when he came up, he had substantially above average swing speed, almost 73 miles an hour. Last year, that took a step back to 70.9 miles an hour, almost a 2 mile or exactly a 2 mile an hour drop. And then this year, it's gone another mile and a half. Um, One thing I will note is that last year, he also intentionally, well, maybe I shouldn't say intentionally, but his swing length was cut down by almost a half foot. If you just think about the relationship between how long your swing is and how fast you're able to swing it, if you swing longer, you have more time to accelerate, more time to really, yank on the bat. Um, and so it stands to reason that him shortening the swing a little bit, maybe for a little bit more bat to ball, something of that sort, would also slow his bat down a little bit. That said, there's been no change in swing length this year, um, and another mile and a half drop on the bat speed is really disappointing. And now it's in the range of this is below major league average. This guy who's supposed to be this, you know, huge power hitter, 25, 30 home runs a year is what we were talking about now is not even swinging with average bat speed. And that's really, really disappointing. Um, but one of the things that I thought was so fascinating as I was looking at that is Kjerstad has a swing this year. If I scroll down to this plot, you can see like the high end of his swing speed is actually um, higher than it has been in any year previously. And the fascinating thing about it is he ripped off an 81.1 mile an hour swing and a swing that was only 7 feet long. Um, I pulled up a leaderboard because, that is really, really fast and also, about major league average swing length. It's pretty short. Um, and I was like, who is actually like swinging like this? And I'll say, 113 players in Major League Baseball have taken a swing this year that is that fast and that short. The only, the major league leader in these swings is Pete Alonso, who has 12 of them. Gunnar Henderson is actually second, fast, short swing. And so just to illustrate, like this is not a thing that happens very often. Again, Pete Alonso has the most in Major League Baseball this year, and he's only managed to swing this hard and this short on 12 pitches in total. So I just want to illustrate, like Kjerstad does have the top end bat speed that you really, really want to see from him, but very simply, that's just not the way that he swings the bat most of the time. Um, I think one thing that's kind of interesting about that is, that there's this relationship between, um, I guess, the type of swing that you're taking. Uh, if you listen to Eno Saris and the Rates and Barrels podcast, you will always, always hear about an A and a B swing. Um, and, it's hitters will basically develop a I, that they will have like the it is 2-0, I'm sitting on a fastball and I'm gonna rip through the heart of the zone. And then they have the like, okay, I'm down 0-2 and I need to foul off some pitches. There is an A swing and a B swing, and the B swing is just more defensive. It is, there's some element of apprehension behind it. You need to go ahead and just, like see the ball a little bit longer, shorten up, and just try to flick something off somewhere. Um, and it seems like Kjerstad is kind of taking that swing all the time. Despite the fact that the average bat speed has gone down in each of those years, the total range of swing speeds has not really changed that much over his career. Like in 2023, the reason his average bat speed was so much higher was because the low end was so much higher. His slowest swing in 2025 and 2024 was about 61 miles an hour. In 2023, it was 65. And so he's just taking more and more and more of these defensive slow swings. And it's entirely reducing his ability to impact the baseball. Um, one thing, there's a whole new suite of bat tracking metrics that I really should get into at some point on this podcast. I'm not going to do it today just because of how long this is running, but um, the attack direction is a new thing. Basically, they are tracking the swing. It's this incredible suite of optical tracking sensors that are installed in all these stadiums, and they're following the bat path and are able to see, the actual angle that the bat is hitting the ball with. So, his attack direction on average is 2 degrees to the opposite field. So, his bat is granted mostly squared up towards center field. That's what everyone's is. But in his first year in 2023, it was 2 degrees to the pull side. So he's gradually been, catching the ball a little bit deeper. And that is actually something that that they illustrate. They have what's called the intercept point. And against his center of mass, it's close to 2 inches. Um, he's hitting the ball close to 2 inches closer to him, um, relative to what he did in 2023. So, this all just paints a picture of in 2023, he is attacking in a way that he simply is not right now. He is getting his best swing off more often. Um, he's catching the ball out front that is leading to pulling the ball. You see in 2023, again, the 2 degree to the pull side attack direction. Um, that is really like the Heston Kjerstad that we want back. I'm sure that he has learned a thing or two about, well, I I was about to say I'm sure he's learned a thing or two about plate discipline in his time, but this is the worst plate discipline by pretty much every metric that we have seen from him. Um, so yeah, I take it back. But yeah, we want to see him attacking the ball. We want to see him showing that power. Obviously we've seen it on a couple home run balls this year. Like when he gets a good swing off and gets to it, it's glorious. It is what it is. But his head, I think his approach is so messed up right now. Um, he is not getting good swings off, ever virtually. Um, and he really, really like this is something that needs to be developed. This is something that needs to be worked on, and I think he needs a reset at AAA. Um, yeah, I think that I'm gonna leave it there today. I think Kjerstad's an interesting thing because some of this stuff like attack angle, um, well, particularly like vertical bat angle, which Baseball Savant refers to as tilt here. Kjerstad has always had this really, really steep tilt, uh, and that is really, really conducive to pull side pop, which is conducive to home runs, conducive to slugging. Um, I man, yeah. I'm trying to debate as to, like how much I go into this right now with you guys. I apologize. So I guess I'll say a little bit. Like Kjerstad has one of the steepest bat paths in Major League Baseball. I'll go to it real quick. There is if you go to the swing path attack angle leaderboard, there's some incredible visualizations. Those of you watching on YouTube can see. They always put up O'Neill Cruz because very simply O'Neill Cruz swings the bat like 85 miles an hour and it's awesome. So they're showing his swing here, but you can go through and you can look at a number of different things. One of them is this swing path tilt. And, Heston Kjerstad is 16th in Major League Baseball. His average swing is 38 degrees, which is pretty steep. Um, and basically, the vertical bat angle, I don't, I'll say very, very frankly, I don't really enjoy uh, just looking at the average VBA in this sense because VBA is very, very dependent on what like the location of the pitch is. If you are swinging at a fastball and at the top of the zone and you want to maintain this super steep bat path, you have to put your hands up above your head, like kind of samurai katana style, um, and be pointing the bat back down. There's no way to hit a pitch at your chest with a bat, pointed down toward the ground. It's just not possible. So I think that, I like the way that this is pictured here, um, is just averaging out every swing, which theoretically, it should all average out to a pitch somewhere in the middle of the zone. And what you're looking at is, effectively that. But I also do think that we talked about 40% of pitches that Heston Kjerstad is seeing are in those two zones, low and outside, low and in. And both of those pitches are going to be conducive to a steep bat path because he is going to be swinging down at the ball. Um, so this might be a little bit inflated by that, but I do think it's worth pointing out, like the reason we have so much hope in this guy. The leader in this category is Riley Green. Second is Freddie Freeman. I'm skipping over Drew Waters, skipping over Andy Pages, who's actually been fine this year. But then James Wood, Connor Norby, Spencer Torkelson, Nick Castellanos, Jung-Hoo Lee, who's had a great season, Aaron Judge, Ryan McMahon, who's hit for a lot of power, Eugenio Suarez, who obviously hits for a lot of power. Um, these are some of the names up on this list. And, what's like all the names I mentioned, I should say, like pair that with great bat speed, pretty much everyone besides Freddie. Um, but this is, clearly a recipe for some power, like particularly Judge, Eugenio Suarez, James Wood, when you get the vertical bat angle pretty steep, basically, if you then catch the ball out front, you are kind of tilting the bottom of the bat forward. And in that way, this is very, very hard to describe verbally, but kind of think of like the bat is a rectangle, like the sweet spot of the bat is a rectangle. And so you want to be operating in the long part of the bat. Um, and the long part of the bat is basically along the bat itself, is what I'm trying to say. The short part of that rectangle is moving up and down, you know, this is hard. If you're holding the bat out like flat in front of you, it's moving up off the bat and down off the bat. Um, and that's why I guess like for a very flat bat at the top of the zone, where you'll try to be meeting these fastballs. That's why these fastballs, back in the day, they talk about Justin Verlander and uh, Garrett Cole. Man, I could not come up with Garrett Cole's name. You know how they'd give up a lot of home runs at the top of the zone with these high flat fastballs. And it would also still be an effective pitch because most of the time, like you are operating in the short direction on the bat. You're not moving down toward the handle or toward the end. You're moving off to the sides of it, which is up and down vertically above it. And that's why you get so many pop-ups on those high fastballs. That's why you get, so many whiffs on those high fastballs because you're operating like in a realm where the bat does not have a lot of play that way. But with these pitches kind of lower in the zone, if you can, get that good tilt on your bat and then you are like taking the handle to end of bat direction where it's a lot longer and you're using that to kind of steer the ball by kind of getting under it, that's like the recipe for elevating the baseball. That's really what it is. Um, but part of that is also very, very contingent on like getting it to the pull side, intercepting the ball out front. All of those guys that I mentioned, James Wood intercepts the ball 32 inches in front of himself. Aaron Judge 30.7. Oh, I'm sorry, 31.3. Eugenio Suarez 35.7. He's very, very heavy to the pull side. And again, Kjerstad is down at 29.1. Now, I think that just goes to show that Kjerstad, like, he has this very, very steep vertical bat angle, which is lovely, but it really does not do anything for you unless you are like getting around the ball and elevating it properly. Um, basically, if you can picture, kind of on that angle, swinging the bat out, you can also kind of picture swinging it back in. And what that is pointing to, essentially, is a ground ball to the shortstop if you're Heston Kjerstad. Um, if you're not getting the bat fully extended and you have that steep angle, that is where you are driving the ball. So that's all to say that, Kjerstad does have this bat path that can be optimized for a lot of power, and I think that's why he's so tantalizing to a lot of people. Like, including myself, like the potential is absolutely still there that this clicks in the second half of the season after a little bit of time at AAA or something. But I do think it's really, really important to note that while he is not able to lay off pitches outside of the zone and he is like not catching the fastball out front in the way that he needs to, there's just like no world where this bat path means anything. Um, and so you really, really like need to see some very, very definitive improvements from him if you want to have any hopes and dreams of him turning into Kyle Stowers, which is just a joke that I had to throw in at the very, very end. I think they traded away the right person. I agreed with what they did last year, but man, it does hurt to see him succeeding so much. Um, that's how I'm gonna end it. I went a little bit longer than I meant to, but I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I think this was, an interesting one to kind of like dig in and learn about him a bit more, despite the fact that uh, it's not good news. I think the thing that was comforting was this is a world where the eye test absolutely matches what the data says. You watch his games and you're like, dude, why are you swinging at that? This is just another like change up away. This is just another like breaking ball 57 feet in the dirt. Like please, please get it together. Figure it out. Do not swing at this stuff. Get your fastball. Go hit it. Um, and yeah, the data backs all that up. Man, it's been disappointing. I have hope that, when this Orioles team kind of resets and reloads for next year, like Kjerstad can be a part of that team, can be a valuable part of that team. Um, but also, man, like please just don't let him ever play in the field. That's another aspect of this I haven't even mentioned. Going back, he's been worth almost -6 runs defensively. Let's go back to Savant for him. Yeah, he's in the third percentile in fielding run value. That's on top of being, again, like one of the worst hitters in baseball, worth a half a human as a hitter. He's been in the third percentile. So 97% of right fielders are better at right field than Heston Kjerstad is. I think I'm done with bad news. I'm gonna leave it at that. Y'all have a wonderful day. Orioles are taking on the White Sox starting tonight, Friday night. So hopefully, uh, we can get some relief from the torment that is this season and enjoy some wins. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. We'll see what happens. You all enjoy your day and go O's.